Spray everything in the back with WD-40. To remove your caliper with the brake pads, to pull it off, you need to loosen up these two bolts on top and bottom. These are 13mm, or if you don't have a 13, a 1/2 inch works, but it might be really snug with all the dirt and everything that's on there. Just try to use a 13. Take these two off. If they're really snug and you really don't have the upper body strength to loosen these off, you can use a rubber mallet and just hit the end of your wrench. 1, 2. Also have these two bolts right here and here. These are 18mm. Fits perfectly over that. Same thing, if you don't have that upper body strength or a really bad angle, you can use a rubber mallet and tap that down. Now these two both have washers attached to it, so just be careful not to lose that washer. You really need it on there. There's one. Now I know you're probably wondering, why is she using hand tools? We've seen some of her other videos where she's got air tools. But if you're stuck on the side of the road and you're trying to watch this video, pretty sure you don't have air tools with you. Now remember, I did tell you these two bolts take the caliper off, so you can remove that now if you want to. You're just going to have to wiggle it off a little bit. Just like that. I just let mine hang out while I take the rest of this off. It's really recommended you pin this up, but I'm not going to be banging around too much. Okay, now that that's off, just keep everything together for now. Set it aside. If your rotor is not seized on here at all, it should just come off like this. It should just come right off. Bolt 2. Put your new rotor on. Okay, when taking off the old brake pad, they should just pop right out of place. This one's really not that bad, but because I'm replacing the rotors, I'm gonna replace the brake pads too. That way it's new rotors, new brake pads, and everything wears evenly. Hold the new brake pad on the front side. Just slide right in. Okay. Take this one out. It's old, rusty, and dusty. There's a lot of brake pad left, but I don't want any uneven wear. So, should go. make sure when you're putting these on, I really don't think you can confuse these. Make sure that the rounded edges of both brake pads are in the same direction. So now I have a rounded edge and rounded edge. Sometimes the new brake pads come with these new little inserts that you can change out. I just try to keep the same one as long as it still looks in good condition. Okay, this is ready to go back on. Okay, now this is ready to go back on, and you really can't mess up the direction because only one side has the holes for these bolts. So that's going to be towards the back, lined up with the two holes that are already back here. Okay, you just line up those holes and put the two 18mm bolts back in. And that once you get those two 18mm bolts back in, that will hold the brake pads in place so you can put the caliper back on top of it. Just a little tight for now. Okay, now that these are in, you can see that the rotor still moves a little bit, which is fine. What you want to do, squeeze these brake pads tight. You want those to rest directly against the rotor. Okay, now because these brake pads are, because there's more pad on here than what we had before, the caliper is already tight enough to fit over the old brake pads, but there's not enough space to put the new brake pads in there. So what we're going to have to do is take this ring on the inside of the caliper and push it back in, and that will allow us to slide the caliper back over. This is that ring that's inside a vise right now. And I'm just going to tighten it, and you'll see that ring compress in. Just watch this area right in here, and you'll see it begin to move in. Okay, that should be good. And when you release it, it will not come back out until you apply pressure to the brake pad itself. So that's in. Okay, for these two 18mm bolts, they need to be installed and torqued to 840 inch-pounds. Okay, so recap. Remove the lug nuts from the tire. Take the tire off. Remove the two 13mm bolts, top and bottom. You can leave this one on, that's fine. Remove the two 18mm bolts, one here, one here. When you remove the two 13s, the caliper will come off. When you remove the two 18s, the entire housing comes off, and that's where you can take off the rotor and the brake pads. So if you're just doing a brake job, just remove the two 13mm bolts. You can take this off, and then you will be able to replace your brake pads on both sides and put this back on. But we're doing the rotor and the brake pads. Once those are done, put everything back on. And like I said, the bolt torque spec for these is 840 inch-pounds. So tighten those on all the way. You can probably do these as well.